Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you and the panelists I've met and engaged with. For your new cohort of students, congratulations and welcome to the world of being a yoga instructor. I am so elated to be engaged with you all and also to have you meet these three dynamic panelists. And I have to say, having taught yoga and been a yoga practitioner since the 90s and taught since early 2000s, it's really so exciting to me, and it fills my spirit that you are coming into this space right now, because there's such an opening and there's such a space for you, and it's necessary. And the equity that is coming into yoga right now is a beautiful reflection of what yoga really has always been about. So I'm introducing myself to you as well, and I just gave you a little bit of history about me having been a yoga instructor for a long time, and we've been talking. I'm from California. I lived in Atlanta. I'm now a Pittsburgher. Been here since 2012, and I am going to be facilitating this discussion for you. And I want to encourage my panelists, when we are engaging in conversation, before you begin to speak, you just say your name. We want to be sure that we are inclusive of everyone. So for those who are visually impaired or whatnot, we want to be sure that we give our names out when we're speaking and answering the questions. And again, if you have a question, if you can hold on to it, that would be wonderful, because in the last 10 minutes, we are going to have a little Q&A, and we're going to let our panelists also speak to what they do and what their passions are and invite you into their space as well. So we have Alecia. And if you want to do a jazz hands, I have a cousin named Alecia, so I have to navigate through that. And, and she has an amazing program. She has a passion for moms and prenatal yoga. She has a passion for art and yoga, and she has her own business. And she's a native Pittsburgher, and she will be sharing with you. And then we have Felicia, who's she could do a little hand raise. She has some artwork from Felicia's class behind her. And she does a lot. She's been in yoga teaching and practicing for over 30 years. She has some amazing work that she does in anti-racism. And she's just a powerful individual. So she will be speaking with you. And then we have Jivana, who is from my home state, California, and he's in UC Santa Barbara. And he has, again, been in yoga for, I feel like I'm telling our age when we say we've been doing this for 20, 30 years. And that's, it doesn't mean anything except we have those experiences. So if I had a panelist on here who's been doing it for 1 year, your worth is not in how much time you've been doing it. But he has an amazing story to share with you. He has kicked off an online training with accessible yoga, and he'll be sharing that as well. So with that being said, we're going to get into some of the questions you asked. We have these questions. We've spoken before. I'm going to share them. And again, if you have any other insight or other things you would like to expand on, please feel free to write them down or think about them, and we'll address them later. Megan will be facilitating the chat. We're not going to use it that much, but if you need to or you have to, you can. And you can definitely give us a jazz hand, 2, 1, give us a snap. You can say, I have a question, and we'll address that. And you see Marissa, she's over on this side as well. So Megan, I think, I guess you can unmute the panelists as I address the questions to them, because everyone's on mute.
I think it might be best if they do, because that function kind of fades in and out for me sometimes.
Okay, so they do have the ability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we have some wonderful questions, and Alicia, you're down in the corner on my screen. I'm going to give you the first question. As new yoga teachers in our infancy, what advice would you give us that would support us in our foundation to become inclusive and equitable in our teaching?
Thank you. So this is Alecia from Yogamotif. And when I think about giving advice to someone as soon as they begin their teaching journey as a certified yoga teacher, the first thing that actually popped into my mind just now is that think about what you've already been teaching before you were certified, right? What was your practice? What was a part of your life that is like really, that's like your muscle memory? And like start there and think about what, you know, I was sharing earlier, it's like if you were to teach someone how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something like that, something that you do maybe as a part of your life, you wouldn't, you may not prepare for it. You would just do it. And I think about as a part of your own personal practice, what parts of your healing practices are that type of muscle memory for you, and really teaching from what you know. And so that you can teach from a point of strength. And don't think about the things that you don't know. They're not for you yet, and they're not for other people. It's coming from you. I think about when I first began, and I attempted to teach outside of my scope at times, and I felt in my classes when it wasn't a good fit. And so I would just encourage you to, especially if like you have a really wonderful, like a meditation practice, you know, and just thinking about what a beautiful gift it is to give others something that is just really steeped deeply and intuitively into your own nature. And so that's what I would offer.
Alecia, that was beautiful. And I will say, Jivana, do you want to expand on that?
Sure, thanks. Hi, everybody. This is Jivana. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Yeah, I appreciate what Alecia said. I love the idea of bringing in the scope of practice right away. I think that's often lost in the yoga world, that we tend to think that once we're a yoga teacher, we have to know everything and be able to teach everything. But I do think there's certain things we can do to make our classes more accessible and more equitable. And I guess I would start by just really looking back at what yoga means to us and looking at the foundational teachings of yoga and yoga philosophy. And that's where I always get my inspiration. And I just constantly look back and try to understand, you know, how what I'm teaching today reflects those ancient teachings and what I really love about yoga, which is this spiritual, subtle teachings, which really speak to the fact that we're all one. And I think we have to be careful with that, though, because we can't just jump to that oneness right away. We have to also embrace the reality of our differences and that we all have such different realities and lives. So I find that for me, equity and accessibility really comes from holding that paradox, which is that within yoga and in yoga teachings, we see that there's this oneness, but in reality, we all have so many differences. And actually by embracing those differences, that's really how we create access, by really allowing people to practice a form that works for their body, to empower students to do what works for them, to embrace difference in the practice by understanding that it's kind of leading this eventually to this connection. So I don't know if that's helpful.
I see some positive faces there. I think that's helpful. And I would like to piggyback on that. I definitely was impacted by a testimonial of a student's share that you had. And I would love for you to share that with this group, because I think it expands on what you and Alecia were just talking about. Like, as new teachers, you know, what do you teach? How do you teach? Where do you come from? So would you be willing and feel comfortable sharing that experience?
Which one was that with when I was teaching a student? Was Addie Barkan, that story?
Yeah. Yes.
Because I was just, I was talking to April and them about this experience I had recently, which was I got to teach this great disability activist, Addie Barkan. Maybe you know him. His name is A-D-Y, his first name and last name B-A-R-K-A-N. And it's worth looking him up if you don't know him. He was just profiled as part of the Democratic convention that they just had. They had a short piece about him. He has ALS, and which is a a degenerative disease where he is basically paralyzed and he doesn't speak with his voice. He uses a computer and he moves his eyes on a screen to pick out the words. And so then the computer speaks the words. Anyway, he actually lives here in my town, Santa Barbara, and I got to meet him a few months ago. And I had a chance to teach, well, he invited me to come teach him yoga. And I was excited to do that because I love his work and I've been following him for a long time. Anyway, so I went to his house and it's funny because I had a plan. You know, I had planned like, oh, you know, we could do some gentle movement and breathing practices, relaxation and meditation. I had like, you know, I put together what I thought would work for him. But then when I got there and I saw that actually he had less movement than I thought, he really had no movement by himself. He had an assistant that could move his body, but he couldn't move himself. And he actually was on a respirator that was helping him breathe. So it was controlling his breathing rate. And so I realized like pretty much everything I had planned that we couldn't actually do. That, you know, like pranayama, where you work on controlling the breath and slowing it down, like he couldn't really do that in the way that I had thought of it. He had to experience it differently. And so it was just one of those experiences where I had to let go of my like preconceived ideas about what yoga would be or would look like. And I have been teaching a long time and I am older. It's okay, April, that you said that. I appreciate that. I've been teaching almost 30 years. And so I thought I had experienced like every possible scenario, but there's always something new that comes up. And the extra challenge I had with Addie was the fact that he communicated through this device because it took him a really long time and it was tiring for him to respond to my questions. Because normally what I do is if I don't know what to do in a situation, I ask the person, you know, how do you want to do this? Or what do you think? Like I try to engage the student and learn from them and tell them, look, you're the master of your body and you can teach me right now, like what this pose could look like for you or what this breathing practice will look like for you. And that was hard because he couldn't communicate that quickly. And so it really made me go back to basics and think about what am I trying to share. And so I think the story I told you, April, is kind of embarrassing, but I thought, well, I can't move his body like in asana, but I could maybe work on his posture because he was kind of slouching in bed. He was sitting up in bed. So I thought we could put a pillow behind his back. So his assistant helped me and we laid him down. But then once he was laying down, he started choking on his own saliva because he was sitting up for a reason, right? And I didn't realize that. So I was saying I almost killed him through asana by getting him laying down. He started choking and it was a scary moment. And then, but I got a pillow behind his back, sat him back up, got him comfortable, and we did some meditation. And then actually I ended with a quick little home and he got excited about that and asked me to do more chanting. So I ended up just leading a whole bunch of chants that I know. And he loved that. He said that was his favorite part. And he asked me to send him like the meanings of the chants. And it just was interesting because I hadn't thought about chanting as something that I could bring to that experience and something he would enjoy so much. So, and we did other things. We did meditations on the respirator, actually the sound of that machine and his breathing. A body scan where he could just notice his body and witness it without judgment. And then of course the chanting, which he liked the best. Anyway, I hope I explained it well enough, but it was just such a great experience for me to realize that I think I know what I'm doing, but I'm always learning.
Thank you for that. And that is the essence of teaching. Whether you're a quote unquote infant teacher or an experienced teacher, every person you engage with is new. Every class you engage with is new, even when they're the same people that come into the same studio. So thank you for sharing that, Jivana. And you spoke about language. I'm gonna throw it to Felicia because I really enjoyed listening to you when we talked about language while teaching and what language do you find most helpful and which language do you find most harmful when you're teaching your classes?
Hi, everyone. This is Felicia. Language, hello, yes. Language most helpful in yoga class to me, and this is my perspective, is really not using the mindfulness language. So really distilling our language down to an anatomical language is helpful to me. Side to side instead of using right and left. Another access point for language in yoga class that I've learned over the years. Not using, like I don't use Sanskrit because I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, East Indian Sanskrit scholar, nor do I aspire to be one. So as a Black woman practicing East Indian Raja Yoga, I have to acknowledge that there's a lot of limitations that I have. And speaking to what Alecia said, is that my way of my practice, my way of conducting my practice is really personal and intimate, and that's where I lead from. So for me, it's just really simple and basic in terms of not trying to be elitist in the words and the language that I use, because that's another barrier of access that's really been off-putting to me. So yeah, that's pretty simply just not taking as much of the ego out of my teaching as possible. A lot of us as teachers, we get affected by us being teachers. And so for me, I think it speaks to, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Jivana, what you were saying in terms of even teaching from your own practice, what you know, and also being really flexible in your mind when you see that your words are impacting people's actions, being able to switch up. And so really being present to look at the people who are in front of you and see how your words are responding in their bodies. Yeah, that would be my answer.
I love that. You really, this is April speaking. You really resonated with me and when we were talking with you earlier about the uses of Sanskrit, right? Being elitist and harmful. It can be, and it can be, I mean, it's an acculturation. I think that's you were speaking to.
Absolutely. You know, again, I don't aspire to be a Sanskrit scholar. So for me, in the language that I speak, it's like perpetrating a fraud. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to use a language that I'm not committed to 100 in learning correctly. And also there's, even in learning the language, there's a whole culture that needs to be studied, you know, even in understanding how yoga came to the West, you know, it's through colonization, it's through a lot of violence. So understanding the subtleties of even using someone else's language and not committing to really learn it, you know, like through and through.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. This is April again. So we're talking about acculturation. I'm going to throw the football back to Alecia. And Jivana, I think he'll come back on. You'll probably find him, Megan, trying to come back in. But what do you find yourself doing, working to break the stigma of what yoga should look like? Alecia, I'm giving that to you to start with.
Thank you, April. Yes, this is Alecia. And when I think about the stigma of yoga, and when I think of that stigma, it's like who you see on the cover of a yoga magazine, which is a tall, thin white woman, and recognizing that that is the image that is broadcasted in the West, in the United States, and what my presence looks like in that space. I actually ground down in my own practice and in the image that I actually have for myself. And what that means is I don't worry about it. I don't, like, life is full right now for everyone in different ways. we are in the middle of social unrest, in addition to our own lives that are already full and in need of just support that we experience under the healthiest circumstances. And so when I think about the idea of what my image might look like in the presence of whiteness, it doesn't rest on me very long, especially able-bodied whiteness. It doesn't rest on me very long, because if I spent that much time thinking about what other people thought of me and when they were in my presence and how that makes them feel, I'd be out of my own practice. It would be a distraction for me, because when I do listen, the words are violent and it's harmful and it's full of assumption, and thoughts of what my limitations are, or thoughts of what the limitations are of the people who I love and care for in my community. I'm in the community of a lot of full-bodied Black women, and the language that I hear around that is that they're not able to move their bodies, and that's like literally like my cousins and my family members when I'm in those spaces. And so I reject it and I recognize that, and I offer that to everyone here. Like when there are images out in the world that don't reflect your experience, like that's just a distraction. It's a distraction from your practice. It's a distraction from your work and the growth and the healing that's available to you. And so when I interact with it, I think that sounds like your problem. It's like, sounds like you're working through something. And maybe I have space to support you if I feel called, like if I really ground down and ask like, okay, is this a person that I need to engage in this way? Are they worth this energy from my life right now? Because for me, it's taking away from my children who are all up on me physically. And then if that answer is yes, then I engage them in conversation. But often the answer is no. Like this is their own work. This is their own life experience. And if they feel that if your presence reflects on them, their own issues, then what an opportunity for them to grow. And so, yeah, those are my general reactions. And then also there are spaces where that like literally wears down on me and I have to separate myself and be in my own practice for a little bit longer, so that I can just be in spaces where people might interact with me as an other. And so that's present as well.
I love that. I really love that you spoke to needing your own practice and how all of it takes you back to your own practice. And also, you said earlier that you're very honest and you just tell the truth. And it's important to hold your own truth. So I appreciate you sharing that. This is April, everyone. I appreciate Alecia sharing that with you all. Know your truth and be grounded in yourself, which you're a great reflection of. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to move on with another question because I do want Jivana and Felicia to kind of expand on that, but I'm going to go through the questions and maybe come back to that one because that one, I think all of you are breaking the stigma of what yoga should look like in your work. But I'm going to go to Felicia and ask you in proxy for one of the students. As a person who is blind, people are oftentimes shocked that I can even practice yoga. Do you have any advice to help navigate the challenges that are going to arise regarding legitimacy as a teacher?
Oh, yes. We're questioned all the time, regardless of what our access or abilities are. And especially as a Black woman, again, this question resonates really near and dear to my heart because I think it speaks to you being blind is really a gift. but you need to see that. And I think Alecia really spoke eloquently to us having confidence and building up your self-esteem in your own practice. Oftentimes I've gone on into spaces that are very hostile. I even have been in yoga teacher trainings that are very hostile and are not welcoming to me in my practice. But, you know, and Alecia spoke to this again in terms of you have to drill down and feel so good about yourself and know that the gifts that you are going to bring to this practice are going to be tremendous. Like the way that you probably are able to call out a class would be unlike and more intimate than a person who has sight. So it's like you have to really center and as Alecia said, ground down into that feeling so daggone good. And I am the cussing yogi, so no disrespect to anyone, but you got to drill down so damn intensely into, like, you know, your practice and come from a place of confidence, because someone in that space is going to need your confidence. You're going to be a role model. And so that class that you would call out would be extraordinary. And I can liken it to Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder is like one of my all-time musicians, because the way he is able to articulate the English language, that he's able to say what I see and what I feel in a way that it's like, wow, how does he know that? And that's because all of your other senses are at a heightened awareness, more so than those of us who have sight. So please be super confident in yourself. Practice as if your life depended on it. And when you teach, come from your toes, come from that space. And you're going to have a tremendous practice in terms of teaching, and the souls that you're going to be able to help support. It's going to be transformative. So yes, power to the practicing folk.
Yeah, power to the practice. I like that. It gave me chills when you're speaking to that. And this whole thing of grounding down and knowing yourself and being confident and working through your self-doubt and working through, that's where you get grounded down in yourself and become unapologetic again about who you are and what you bring to the table. Because so many people will question, like you said, in anything that you bring. Thank you. Jivana, I'm excited to ask you this question because it kind of goes to accessibility and your platform and what you bring. What tools do you use to make and hold space for people so that they feel comfortable in your yoga classes?
Okay, this is Jivana. I wonder if I can respond to the other question also, that last
I would
one.
love you to, yes.
I just love what both Alecia and Felicia were saying, but I wanted to speak of it from kind of a different angle, which is like, rather than look at it for that blind teacher, rather than look at their role, I think of the responsibility of the rest of us. And especially if I, like as a white man, like the privilege I have and like what I need to do to make the yoga community more welcoming to people with disabilities or people of different races or whatever. I think that's the job of privilege, is to create welcoming space and actually to really be active in that. And that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, my organization, Accessible Yoga, is really dedicated to doing that in a few ways. And I just want to mention two of them. One way is to build communities. So I think if you're a blind teacher, or you're a teacher with a disability or whatever you think, you feel your differences and the ways you've been marginalized, I think it's important to have community, that you feel like you can find people that are like you, that will support you. And because sometimes we don't have that inner strength that, I mean, I love what Felicia was saying, but sometimes it can be hard, it can be hard to find that inner strength, especially when you're new. And we need to find other people like us. So like, I know within our organization, we have, like I can think off the top of my head of 3 or 4 blind yoga teachers that I know. And I would think it'd be great to connect you to those people, and to know that there are other people like you out there doing this work, and to feel like you're supported, because that's important for me. Like I'm a gay man, and like for me it's important that I know other gay men have this similar parallel experience, so I don't always have to like figure everything out myself. And the other part of it, though, I think is advocacy, and that's something that I work on a lot, which is advocating that we change the way that yoga is perceived and represented in the West. Actually, Alecia was talking about that earlier, like what we see through yoga media, we can try and ignore it, but also we can try to change it. And I feel like there is a change happening well, there's a change happening in the world. There's a cultural revolution happening, but it's impacting yoga, I think, deeply in the West. And I just wrote an article for Yoga Journal last week on avoiding ableism in yoga. And speaking with the editors of Yoga Journal, I've been amazed by the changes there. I've been writing for them for a number of years, and they feel the pressure. Like they do. They know they have to do better, and they really want to do better. And I think it's amazing to see that. I felt a shift. I'd say because of Black Lives Matter, I feel like there's a big shift in it being just like something they think they should do, to now this is like they're doing it, and they just want to make sure they do it well, which they may not do well, but I'm just saying it's happening. So I think you'll see, like, if you notice the covers of Yoga Journal in the next year, I think you're going to see something completely different than what we've seen in the past. And they're just one example. I mean, you know, I'm sure they'll fail along the way, but I think good things are happening, and that's because we're all speaking up. So like, if you see something that's wrong and you have a privilege to say something, you need to do that. You need to speak up. And same with Yoga Alliance, like the main registry, like they're trying to do better. And I would just say one thing that I've seen at Yoga Alliance recently is there's a new code of conduct and scope of practice, which just came out this year. And I helped to give them some advice about that regarding disability awareness. And I would say they included a lot of what I suggested. And that's amazing to me that they would do that. So right now, if you look at their code of conduct, it calls for active inclusion of all marginalized communities. That means that if you're registered with Yoga Alliance, which most yoga schools and teachers are in the West, at least in the US, that you now have to follow this code of conduct, which calls for active inclusion. That means more than just like making space. You actually have to reach out to communities and make them feel welcome in your space. Otherwise, you're going against the ethical guidelines that are now part of Yoga Alliance. So I think there's changes happening if we really work on them. Do you know what I mean? Like there's work to do.
I hear you. And it sounds, there's work on both sides, as a practitioner and as the teacher, and bridging that gap. Like, we have to come together.
Mm-hmm. And through peer support too, you know, like I feel like there's a lot of ways we can support each other. Part of that is also, even if you don't feel like you have a platform, you can share the work of people that you admire, people you support, you know, like sharing each other's work. It seems kind of simple, but that's what we do. Like, we have accessible yoga conferences. We used to meet in person, now it's online, but one of the challenges I give people who attend is find someone else there who you can support their work, and like do that. Because the kind of yoga, it seems like it's pretty divided. There's like commercial yoga industry that's very like mainstream. And then there's this whole like other world of yoga. That's like, I think what we're all doing. There's like, it's like another underground grassroots yoga world. That's just like the work is getting done. And I feel like within that world, there's less corporate money, which is good and bad, but we have to support each other. That's how that works. That grassroots, communities work by mutual aid and like figuring out ways to support people who are doing work you admire. So even if, like I said, even if you don't feel like you have a voice, you do, just by sharing and supporting others. It just means a lot.
Thank you for that, Jivana. This is April speaking. I appreciate that. And it goes to speaking about community. And I want to throw that to you, Alecia, when we talk about community. And Jivana talked about, finding your support network and finding your community. When you go to a studio or you go into a community space, what are some elements that make your experience or break your experience?
Thank you, April. This is Alecia speaking. It's so interesting just because of this time of pandemic, and I think about when the last time I've been in a studio. You know, I guess I'm stumbling over my words right now a little bit because sadly, a lot of my experiences have not been a really great sense of community when I've gone into yoga studios in Pittsburgh. And I spend the majority of my practice in community-centered spaces where I practice yoga. And so that might be at a community center like the Kingsley Center, where Felicia taught for a number of years. That was at the Y. And they're, you know, all over the country and all over Pittsburgh. And that's where I practice a lot of my yoga and developed it over the years. And when I've gone into community yoga studios here in Pittsburgh, it has been a challenge to experience that sense of community because I just felt like people weren't really ready to interact with me or with people that look like me. And how that comes out is people assuming that I'm not able to practice and making a lot of comments along the way, what that practice looks like. Or I believe in a hands-off practice, which is not assisting other people. So when I'm teaching a yoga class, especially if I'm in a prenatal yoga class, I don't touch other people's bodies. In general, if it's like my friend and we're, you know, having a practice, that's a little bit different. But in community spaces, I believe in a hands-off practice. And so I've been touched in spaces without my consent, with my eyes closed, and that is not it's not a part of my practice. And so it has been a challenge for me to enjoy that sense of community in those spaces. Now, on the other side of that, going through Felicia's training. So I was certified by Felicia 3 years ago, and the first graduating class. And it's so funny. We started there from a sense of community. We were both on the board of New Voices for Reproductive Justice, which is a nonprofit dedicated to the health and well-being of Black women, girls, and femmes. With the executive director, Latasha D. Mays. Just all those things. They're a wonderful organization. You should check them out. And we were both on the board, and Felicia said to me, she sent me a text. Actually, I said to her a comment on the board, and I said, I always thought about being a yoga teacher. And she said, mm-hmm. And then like a couple, maybe months later, she sent me a text and said, you should apply, you should participate in my training. You should apply. And I just responded, LOL, no. That's not my life. Right? But fast forward, here we are. And it's literally because of the sense of community that she created in her practice, right? Mm-hmm. That made me quit my job, open a yoga studio, and just the love that, like, that is how powerful a community can be, right? Mm-hmm. Starting it in the community of like-minded individuals, and then creating a community in her training that was so life-changing. Like, I have a master's from Carnegie Mellon, and that training was like up there for me, like literally life-changing in that way, because it required so much just reflection and vulnerability in regards to my own practice, my own ability, and my thoughts about my own anti-racism journey, and my own trauma-sensitive journey as far as how I practice. And doing that in community where you can feel safe, where you can be vulnerable, where if people are harmful to each other, not even if, when people are harmful to each other, because it is life, right? We are out here and we are we do things that we don't want to be, that are not great for other people, and how to apologize and how to continue to hold each other in love, and move on and move forward, and to keep each other in healthy and accountable conversations and relationships. And so my community has existed because of how it started with YogaRoots on Location many years ago. And I'm grateful, and we still hold each other accountable. I still get phone calls like that was, you should have done a little better there. And it's beautiful, right? Because how often are we in spaces where you get called out or called in, and all of a sudden your relationship breaks, and people move away from each other. And that is difficult because both people have to come to the table in love and in trust, and that you're going to be safe for each other. And so that's what's really important for me when it comes to a yoga community, so that people are really like, people are there and they're committed to humanity, like they're committed to each other's humanity, and they don't walk away from the difficult conversations. And so yeah, those are some of my thoughts.
That was powerful. Thank you. Yeah, you got the hand, you got the jazz hands. This is April, you guys. I hope all of you are really hearing about the depth and breadth of life you can get within a community, and knowing that even us right here together, we are your community now. I'm going to ask one more question, and around 12:20, I'm going to give each of the panelists some time to speak about themselves, because they're so powerful. I want them to share a little bit of their story and what they're doing with you all. And Felicia, Alecia spoke so highly of you. And I've heard so many wonderful things about you within the community for a while now. So I think you would be great go-to for how you build your community. We, as yoga teachers, this is a business. So you might be going in this to do it for free and to give, which is fine, but you also want to thrive and survive. So what advice do you have for these incoming yoga teachers on how to kind of build their community and begin to build their business and their brand and themselves in the community?
Well, wow. Okay, this is Felicia speaking. First, thank you, Alecia. I'm honored. Yeah, let's see, building our brand, YogaRoots on Location, building community. Well, I guess it starts with motive, like why do you want to build a community? And really being honest with that. What I've learned is we have been acculturated to lie so often. And I'm going to get your name right, Jivana. Jivana was speaking, right? Is that correct? I'm correct?
Jivana.
Okay, I'm getting there. Be patient with me. Thank you. You spoke to Yoga Alliance and Yoga Journal. And actually, as you were speaking, I felt my blood pressure rise. So I was doing yoga because while I appreciate, and I'll get to it, April. Yeah. A long way around here. While I appreciate those organizations and what they do, I think oftentimes, and now what is really popular is to have a Black Lives Matter statement. It's really popular. So I don't applaud anyone for doing anything right now. What I really want to see is in 10 years, how have they changed? Who has held them accountable to what they say they're going to do? Like really, who's going to hold them accountable? And for me, it's all about accountability when you're doing community work. I've been teaching here in Pittsburgh specifically for 26 years in the community, first of all, that I live in. So I've lived in this community. So there's a layer of accountability. Like it's not a community that I drop in, teach a class, and I drop back out. I see these folks, I see my folks at family reunions, at the gas station, at Whole Foods, at the co-op. You know, that's the sense of community. I'm a teacher from way back, so I homeschooled my kids. My oldest, Cleveland, was 8 and Maya was 4 when they had to go to school because of divorce. I had to put them in school. I created community in the school. So the teachers, the principal, other parents I held them to a level of accountability because I'm going to be there. I'm going to show up. That level of accountability in yoga, for me, it just translated from my life. I am raised by connectors. So my mother is a connector, and my grandmother and my great-grandmother. So it's a lineage of connectors. We build relationship. Now, why we build relationship is something that we have to inquire ourselves, you know, and like, why do I want to build relationship? And oftentimes, and that's what I'm speaking Yoga Alliance and Yoga Journal, is the motive is more capitalistic. And that's where I have a problem. And and oftentimes we in the community, as we are all community members, especially those folks who are more vulnerable, we see what people's motives are before you know it, before you're able to articulate what your motive is. And what I'm asking folks to do is to be honest. You know, transparency is something that has been thrown around for as long as I've worked. So I'm saying, you know, 40 years, you know, folks talking about being transparent, and they really aren't being transparent. Actually, they're lying. And so we know that. So for me, in this practice, it's a practice of being honest with where we are, and also being in relationships of reciprocity and accountability, where I'm able to call someone out about something they've said, but they're also able to call me out. But we call each other in by still being in a relationship, which we're committed to struggle through this, because we see that it's more important for the greater good that we both grow, and we need to grow together. So community to me is really a vulnerable walk. And it's a walk that I walked before I was introduced to yoga. It's easy to be vulnerable with people who are like-minded. Be able to be vulnerable with somebody who voted differently than you. That's a challenge. That's the real yoga for me. It's real easy. And that's why I go back and I push back on anyone, like, you build community, and you can build community at the same time as you're doing your introspective practice, but also the focus needs to be on ourselves. It needs to be on us shoring ourselves up, because if we don't do that, then we are going to cause harm in community.
Felicia, I want to ask, because we talked about this earlier, do you feel as though your authenticity and your ability to work in community and build community, and like you said, you're very humanistic, do you feel like that authenticity has drawn more people to you and has kept you in this work for so long? Do you think that's a key to your success?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and it, again, like, I'm really self-conscious with calling myself authentic. Because I think if you got to say it, then are you? you know, like,
it's an honest truth,
right.
an honest characteristic of who you are.
Right.
So taking ego out of it, it's just who you are.
Yes, and thank you, April. You know, because for me, as you know, as a Black woman, my own internalized inferiority, internalized racism and sexism comes up in this practice, and I speak to it when it does. And this is a time, it's like, oh, minimize myself, right? And so, you know, this is actually, I'm a really good example of the struggle that we have within ourselves, you know. But if I didn't really focus on practicing shoring up myself and speaking my truth, even when it's really difficult and when folks may, you know, may disagree, and I can adamantly disagree at this point in time. I'm 56, I have nothing to lose. You know, my kids are grown. I was like, I want you all to know the legacy. Like, I don't have land or money to bequeath them, but I have a spirit of truth and being able to be vulnerable and hold space for myself that I'm able to bequeath to them. Yes, authentic, being authentic is a powerful practice. It's really lonely practice too. Like, I'm not gonna lie to y'all. It is a lonely practice, because what you're gonna find is a lot of people who speak the rhetoric, but don't live it in their moment to moment everyday life and holding themselves accountable. And it's hard to be in relationship with those folks. So oftentimes I got to withdraw and be a little bit reclusive and shore myself up. So it's like, okay, can I go into this space? Okay, yes, I'm restored. I can go into that space, So it's a powerful practice though.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are at our 12:20 mark, and Megan, are there any questions? I know we said that Annie might have a question.
Not via the chat, but maybe we could just open it up for people to raise their hand and unmute themselves.
Okay, so we'll take one or two questions, and then I'm going to give the spotlight on our panelists to share themselves and to speak to their work and what they do, and put the spotlight on them to shine. So I saw a hand over here. Is it how do I say that? Delia?
Very close, Delia.
Delia, I love that. Hi, Delia.
Thank you. Good to meet you. Welcome to Open Up.
Thank you.
So my question is really for anybody who might have some knowledge or experience with this. I mainly try to reach out into the veteran population. I'm a disabled veteran, and I work a lot with other organizations that try to get veterans out of isolation and into movement and socializing. And anytime I bring up like, oh, maybe come to yoga with me sometime, it's really, really beneficial, and I go on about it, or discuss about my current practice and learning, and how I hope to bring that to the veteran community. And I hear it outside, with civilians, but also inside with mainly men who will speak of, oh, I'm not flexible enough, or, oh, I don't want to be the only man, or, there's always some kind of like, what's it called? Something that's put on, sorry guys, I get ahead of myself sometimes.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. Like a barrier or a self-made barrier?
No, like when we put a label on something.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like these preconceived notions as to what and who yoga is really for. Mm-hmm. But some of like, I think the most inspiring yogis and now practitioners are actually men who had a lot to combat with themselves through coming back from war, and maybe having a disability, maybe losing a limb. And they're some of the most inspiring teachers I know now, who actually motivated me to want to become a teacher. And it's like, here are these men who, broke through so many barriers and allowed themselves to be vulnerable, like Felicia was speaking of, and looked at themselves to become more authentic. Well, how can we advocate more, especially as a woman who is trying to get more men to the mat? How can we get more men to the mat, and especially more men coming back maybe from combat, who suffered from trauma, who might have physical and emotional barriers?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I'll throw that to the panelists, and you can raise your hand if any of you three. So I should start. Go right ahead. And then Jivana, we'll have you go next.
I taught recently, last summer, I taught a women's veterans class for Adagio Health. And it was really powerful. So they were already open. They asked me, right? But also in years past at Old Kingsley, like 15, 16 years ago, I taught Black Vietnam vets a yoga class. And it went in cycles. It was hard, you know, for them to even envision them being in yoga class. And what I did is I made it a chair class, and I didn't talk about yoga a lot. I said, we're gonna just move, right? And so in a way, I just, you know, distilled the movement down, did 6 manipulations of the spine, right? You know, and they loved it. And then more of them came. I've also taught, what is it? Okay, so the Black Vietnam vets, and then there's another veterans session that was just open to vets. So it didn't matter, but most of them were men. So very few women. So it was almost like a men's class. And again, just distilling it down to what you're able to do and really working with them on the accommodations. And then even teaching from a space that it's not the modified class, but the modified class is centering the modified class. So not centering a class that for ability class, but centering a modified class, which really shifted. And then at the Kingsley about 15 years ago, I started a men's only class, because most of my students, I would say 98% of them were women. And it was a lower attendance class, but I did have some faithful folks who came through. And it just was a time that worked for them. So really, I marketed to them specifically, as well as I created that the Black Vietnam vets class. So just distilling it down to what are their access needs, what's gonna make them more comfortable, and also not calling it yoga if that was off-putting.
Thank you. That's a great summary of that. Okay, we're going to go over here to Jivana. You said you had some.
Yeah, thanks. This is Jivana. I wanted to recommend reaching out to organizations that are serving and that are offering yoga for veterans. Like there's a whole bunch of them. And again, this is what, like my work with accessible yoga, we try to connect people. And I would just say that it can be so helpful to talk to people that are already doing that work. Well, like Felicia's doing it, so you could talk to her, I guess. But there are also like organizations like Warriors at Ease, Veterans Yoga Project, Connected Warriors. They're really quite organized, and they have programs all over the country. You can either become a teacher for them or get a training with them, and they'll give you tools for that to like help you, like how, you know, they figured out a plan, like how to work with this community. So we don't always have to figure it out ourselves, I guess I'm saying. Like it's great to find other people that are doing similar work that we want to do and build community that way and learn from people that are doing it already. And I was going to say, also the VA actually itself, the Veterans Association, has a yoga program. They have something called Hold Health, which they've only started in a few cities around the country. Like I know that St. Louis is one of the hubs, but there's a few others. So you can look into Hold Health through the VA and learn about how they're bringing yoga into their into the hospitals directly, and making it something that, you know, they're training with these other kind of experts who know how to do it too, and like figure out the right techniques that will make it feel more accessible to men. Because I think that is something that we all need to look at, is also that changing the image of yoga through representing different, you know, changing the way it's represented in the way we put out imagery. So like when we're all marketing our classes, think about what pictures do you use? How do we promote yoga? Because I think there's been such a like disservice done by media in the West to show like thin white women mostly doing the practice, and it just excludes so many other people. So
Thank you.
Good luck. Yep.
Jivana, I really appreciate you saying that. And as Alecia said, I took a quote, she called it the white gaze of yoga. And you just spoke to that. So to honor everyone's time, I want to thank you all, and I want to give the panelists, this is like your your condensed elevator pitch. But I loved Felicia was sharing what her superpower was, and we loved that. Megan and Marissa and I were like, that's really cool. I'm gonna give you guys a minute or two. We wanna hear your unique perspective and what is your unique teaching superpower and how do you cultivate it? And then we do want you to share what you do. We have your websites. We're gonna share that with everyone. And then we have one more question from our students, and then we'll wind it down. So I'll start with Alecia, your unique teaching superpower, how you cultivate it, and how we can, follow you and whatnot. We'll pass
Oh, that's so funny. This is Alecia. So my studio, which is now online, but in person again one day soon, is Yogamotif, spelled like Yogamotif, YogaMotif. Find us on yogamotif.com, and I'm mostly active on Instagram when I feel like it. And we focus on creativity as a wellness practice. And so thinking about the opportunities of intuition that happen during the creative practice, whether that's creating life, if you're currently expecting a child, or if you're making art through a yoga paint party experience. So we offer those, and right now I'm only doing yoga, prenatal yoga online, and then whenever it's safe outside, again in our new world, we will continue our yoga paint party workshops, hopefully continuing in partnership with the Carnegie Museum of Art. And my superpower is it's joy. Like,
love that.
When I am deeply steeped in my practice and having a good time in my yoga classes, people laugh, and they're laughing about their bodies, and I just prompt opportunities to just enjoy your body, whatever it is. Is your skin dry today? Okay, well, let's acknowledge that. Let's take a meditative moment and clear down, or notice how dry your skin feels today, right? And so even if whatever's happening in our bodies, I just like to invite laughter and fun into that movement. And I'm just so excited about the world opening back up again, because I just want to I can't wait to do that in person. It's challenging online, especially offering a trauma sensitive practice. Jokes are can be very offensive, right? And so it's really important to fill out a room.
Know your audience.
You're making a joke. So I'm looking forward to the world opening back up so that I can continue to offer just some laughter and some fun and some movement in this work. Thank you. And thank you for having me. This has been wonderful.
Oh, this is great. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Felicia, what is you shared it, I kind of shared it, but I want you to share what your unique teaching superpower is, how you cultivate it, and plug your business for us so we can support you.
Oh, thank you, April. And it's so funny. My superpower changes day to day. I can't even remember what I said, but my superpower right now that I'm really feeling is that level of connection, being able to curate a space where people are able to be vulnerable, have embodied anti-oppression practice that's grounded and rooted in love. I'm a lover of humans. Not so much the other animals, it's just not my thing. Still working on the love with humans. And I really, a superpower of mine, especially with the yoga community, is being authentic and vulnerable. And so creating spaces where we're able to have these hard conversations about race, sexism, capitalism, and how we're complicit in those systems of oppression, distilling it down to the deep, intimate shadow sides of ourselves, and being able to be free and liberated to share that, but also still be in a loving community with each other, even after I show you that I'm complicit with whatever. So I think my superpower right now is I'm a lover. I'm just a lover. I really enjoy people. I enjoy that the feeling that my heart and my toes get when I'm in relationship with people. So yeah, that's it for this moment.
And that's what you shared before. And you have a training tomorrow.
Oh, yes,
Tomorrow.
right. Thank you, April. I have my inaugural continuing education course, and it's on us having an introduction to the systems of oppression, the big three, the wicked webs of patriarchy, racism, and capitalism, and with an integrated Raja yoga practice, so that we can be more humane to each other. So humanity we can really realize that we're all living our most incredible life and we're supporting each other. So that starts tomorrow. You can find me at YogaRootsOnLocation.com. I am on social media. Thank you, Alecia. IG, as older people, and I have no shame to my game. I'm 56, I'll be 57 tomorrow. So, which is August 24th, because for those of you who will see this later, I'm just really honored to be asked to be here with my fellow panelists, and to be able to share with new yogis. I wish you well, practice, 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 forgive yourself when you fall short, and start it with joy the next day. So
thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
you're gonna wind it down, Jivana, and then we have one more question.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Felicia. Happy birthday. So I don't know, I guess my superpower is making yoga accessible. That's what I've been doing for a long time. And that's what that's what our organization is dedicated to, and what my trainings are about. Mostly I train yoga teachers to make the practices accessible to anyone, regardless of ability or background. So I offer an accessible yoga training that right now is online, which has been fun to learn how to do this all online. And I have one starting in a couple weeks. And I'm excited that our online, the experience I had teaching online actually was kind of amazing. I realized it's more accessible for many people. So we created this whole online training school, and we have other trainers offering other things through our new platform. So it's exciting. And that's at accessibleyogatraining.com. And that's my passion, I think, is just helping people understand that these teachings are available for anyone, and that it's really not about the external experience that we see, that yoga is an internal experience that helps us have a relationship with ourselves and become friends with our own mind. That's what I think about as yoga. And I'm also passionate about the yoga teachings, and Felicia said, Raja Yoga, looking at the history of yoga, but really the essential teachings, and understanding how they speak to us today and how we can use them to navigate the world we're in, which includes social justice, as she mentioned, and understanding that is the heart of yoga: nonviolence, truthfulness. This is really what has been used by Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela. These are the teachings that have changed the world, and it's our tradition. It's part of yoga, and yet I don't see it being used very much in yoga. I think most yoga is basically being taught as exercise, which exercise is great, by the way, and I have no problem with that, but I think there's so much more for us here. Yoga offers, transformational practices for the individual and for the community at the same time. And I just feel like we're just beginning to see that, just beginning to see the impact. And that's actually what I'm writing. I'm writing my second book right now about that, which is very amazing and challenging. And I did write a book about accessible yoga too, which has a lot of ideas about how you can make the practices accessible. So thanks again. Yeah, thanks for having me, and to the other panelists, it's great to meet you. And thank you, April.
Thank you.
And Marissa and Megan for organizing this. And good luck to the new teachers. I feel like there's so much more we could share. I think, yeah, it feels like we barely got started. I mean, this is a huge topic,
Yeah, we could go for hours. I thought about that. And we do want to give a little, a couple of minutes because one of our students had one last question. Annie, would you like to unmute and share your question?
I just want to thank you all so much. I'm just really blown away right now. You all are providing a service that is just so embodied in your values of justice and joy and love, and you're making a difference because right now I personally feel very empowered. And you know, as a blind person who's about to go out into the world of a teacher, you know, and being disabled is very isolating. It's very lonely. And you know, it's the talk of community here just really bolstered, you know, a lot for me here. And so thank you for that. And I guess it goes along with what I wanted to ask you, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but you know, I mean, part of our requirement for our certification is observation hours. And I just wanted to see if you all would be willing to allow any of us to observe your classes. I just want to absorb so much of people who are like-minded. And so, not to put you on the spot, but you know, you all are creating the type of community that I want to be a part of as well.
Annie, this is April, and at our board meeting, we were all crying because it was so amazing. And girl, way to advocate. This is how you promote yourself and get yourself out there as an instructor. And you guys asked about marketing and building community. What you just did is how you do it. So I'm going to let the panelists answer you, but I'm thinking they're all going to say yes. And you can observe me teach too.
Hi, this is Alecia. I teach I'm in the midst of a prenatal yoga series right now that's taking place on Wednesday evenings at 8:30. And so if you're interested, yes, if clearly you are, Annie, and if others are interested, you're welcome to just observe. And we can hook that up. It's over Zoom. And I also was just like, you're smart. Like, that's right. Business owners just like, excuse me, I'm going to take advantage of this right now. I need to get these observation hours. And what else do you all need? Like I'm impressed. So you just got me all tingling over here. So great job. And yes, of course.
And we'll connect you, Annie. This is April. I'll be sure that we get you guys connected, you and Alecia, and I'll let Felicia and Jivana answer too.
Yes, right now, Annie, my public facing classes are limited. So I'm just teaching one class a month. And this is part of my own restoration process after teaching for 26 years and then choosing to travel to Seattle and Brooklyn and Greensboro and Atlanta for yoga teacher trainings. I needed to just take time off. So this is me taking time off. So that's why I'm only teaching one class, a public facing class, the first Monday of the month, 12 to 1. And you're welcome to come. We'll connect, because if there's other ways that you can observe, like even in the yoga teacher training that I'm conducting right now, is still pretty intimate, but there may be times where we'll have a class that can be public facing. So you put that on my heart. So I will work on that, and I'll let you all know.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is Jivana. Similarly, I'm only doing teacher training these days. I'm actually not teaching any public classes, but I'm happy to talk to you about those programs if they're interesting. And I think what I could do is introduce you to some other blind yoga teachers, if you're interested. We have, like on Facebook, we have a really large accessible yoga community that you're all welcome to join. There's over 8,000 people on there, and it's a great way to find other people doing similar work. Like, so you could post something like any other blind yoga teachers out there but I can actually just introduce you directly. And actually those teachers do teach public classes, so you could observe their classes, which I think would be really interesting to kind of get a sense of what they're doing. In fact, I know 2 of them are starting a new program where they're going to help train yoga teachers how to make yoga more accessible for people who are blind or low vision. And it's kind of like a new business they're starting, which is pretty exciting. So they're really excited about that. Natasha and Ali are their names. And yeah, I just welcome all of you to join us on our Facebook group. Or also we have a conference coming up. So our nonprofit runs accessible yoga conferences, and we'll have one October 9th through 11th online. Scholarships are available, and continuing education credits are available, because once you're a yoga teacher, you also have to keep learning. And it's a great way to learn. We'll have over 40 presenters teaching in all aspects of accessibility and equity in yoga. Amazing people like Diane Bondi, Matthew Sanford, Michelle Cassandra Johnson, Kelly Palmer. I don't know, people that I really admire, like my idols, basically. So maybe you can join us there.
Awesome. And I have his links to everything, and we will follow up and make sure all of this happens. I just want to, yeah, you're getting hand snaps and hand claps and jazz hands. Like, thank you all so much. One of our coworkers and co-teachers, Mary Ellen, says, thank you, everyone. I'm so happy I got to sit in on this incredible conversation. And she's somebody who, too, could sit on this panel as well. From my heart feels so full from you students. I'm so excited for your journey. Panelists, I'm excited for your journey, and I'm excited to know you and to be in a space with you. And I thank you for everything that you've shared. I don't want to say it wrong. Delia. She says, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we're here, Open Up is here. We're making yoga accessible for everyone. We have been writing some grants, and I've partnered. We have a new, call it a little petal on our flower called Open Spaces. I've been doing the work for BIPOC community, and I'm unapologetic. I'm a 50-year-old Black woman, and I'm not dimming my light anymore. And I've taught in California, in Atlanta, in Pittsburgh, and I'm in my community, but I'm the only little Black girl here. So I continue to do the work here because yoga is for everyone, and it is for every human being. And we want to be sure that everyone knows that we heal, and health and wellness is for all of us. And we need it now more than ever. So thank you all. Have a great rest of your Sunday. I hope your heart and spirit and souls are filled. Whatever you need, please feel free to reach out to myself, Megan, and Marissa.